You live in a world where everything happens too fast. Worries accumulate, work pressure never disappears, and the feeling of always being busy has become the norm. But what if a path existed to regain calm without escaping the modern world? If you've ever felt trapped in non-stop thoughts and anxiety that keeps you from enjoying the present, you're not alone. Buddhism teaches us that peace is not found on the outside, but in how we face life. Through its principles, it's possible to reduce anxiety without letting stress control us. In this video, we'll explore how Buddha's ancient wisdom can help you live with more tranquility. Stay until the end and discover how small changes can make a big difference in your daily well-being. The weight of anxiety in contemporary life. Anxiety has become a constant in modern life. It's hard to find anyone who doesn't feel overwhelmed at some point by worries that attack us from all fronts. From workplace stress to social pressure, external demands seem endless. But beyond these commitments lies an internal noise, that feeling of being trapped in a torrent of thoughts that never stop. Today, we live with our heads full of non-stop demands, like a constant urgency that never fades. Social media bombards us with seemingly perfect lives while work and personal responsibilities demand more from us every day. Anxiety, therefore, doesn't just appear as an emotional illness, it becomes a physical burden that affects our health. When we think about the impact of stress, we often associate it with obvious symptoms like insomnia, constant fatigue or irritability that we sometimes don't know the origin of. The reality is that stress affects both our mind and our body. This condition can generate serious physical disorders if not managed correctly. Anxiety becomes a cycle of exhaustion where we feel unable to escape the whirlpool of thoughts and occupations that spin endlessly. For example, the constant pressure to achieve productivity standards at work or on social media can make us feel inadequate. Living in a state of anxiety leads us to feel like we're always running but never getting anywhere. This constant feeling of being adrift deeply affects our capacity to enjoy the present and our ability to relate authentically with others. Furthermore, the future is a concept that generates much unease. Worry about what's to come, about what could go wrong, becomes a constant obstacle to living fully. The expectations of who we should be or what we should do feed this anxiety, and in the end we find ourselves trapped in a spiral of worry and emotional exhaustion. Modern life has pushed us to live in a permanent state of alert, and this is where suffering begins. But it's precisely this suffering that invites us to reflect and eventually seek paths to free ourselves from the anxiety that afflicts us so much. Buddha's teachings to free yourself from anxiety. In its profound wisdom, Buddhism offers valuable teachings that can help us reduce anxiety. One of the key principles of Buddhism is the understanding of impermanence, anicca. According to this teaching, everything we experience, whether thoughts, emotions, or external situations, is transitory. Nothing stays the same forever. By understanding that both circumstances and mental states are fleeting, we begin to let go of the pressure to control everything, which often feeds our anxiety. When we face an anxious thought or feeling, one of the first reactions we usually have is to try to avoid it, ignore it, or run from it. But true Buddhist wisdom invites us to accept and observe instead of fighting against our anxious thoughts. We can simply allow them to be. Buddha teaches that the constant struggle to reject painful experiences only generates more suffering. When we resist what we are feeling, we feed it and make it bigger. Instead, by accepting our anxiety, by recognizing it without judgment, we begin to diminish its power over us. In the context of Buddhism, attachment, trasna, is another important cause of suffering. We cling to things that we believe will give us satisfaction or security. Our relationships, our achievements, our expectations for the future. But this attachment is a trap because everything is impermanent. The things we love or the goals we pursue are not always under our control. This non-attachment doesn't mean we stop caring about what we value, but that we understand that happiness doesn't depend on a specific result. Freeing ourselves from this attachment allows us to live with more peace and less anxiety. For example, we often live with anxiety about what could happen in the future. We obsess over what should happen, or with the fear that things will go wrong. Buddha invites us to free ourselves from that burden and live more fully in the present. Instead of worrying about the future, we can focus on what's happening now, in this precise moment. The practice of mindfulness helps us to be conscious of what's happening in the here and now, thus reducing anxiety about what has yet to come. The concept of suffering, dukkha, is also essential to understanding the root of anxiety. According to Buddhist teachings, Buddha taught us that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience, and that the expectations we have about how things should be often generate frustration and anxiety. When we accept that suffering is a part of the human experience, we can free ourselves from the idea that we must avoid it at all costs. This acceptance is not resignation, but an invitation to see difficulties from a new perspective, as opportunities for growth and learning. Instead of seeing anxiety as something that must be eradicated immediately, Buddhism encourages us to see it as a signal, a call to attention about something that needs to be observed, understood, and finally released. Every time we experience anxiety, it's as if it's telling us, here is something you need to let go of. The practice of Buddhist wisdom is to learn to see anxious thoughts with clarity, without identifying with them or being carried away by them. Instead of fighting, we learn to let go. A fundamental aspect of Buddhist teachings is compassion, both towards oneself and towards others. Anxiety, just like other difficult emotions, is often accompanied by a sense of self-judgment. Why do I feel this way? What's wrong with me? But Buddha teaches that true healing comes when we treat ourselves with kindness. Instead of criticizing and rejecting our own emotions, practicing self-compassion is essential to overcoming anxiety. When we allow ourselves to feel what we are feeling without self-reproach, we give space for healing. These teachings may seem simple, but they are profoundly transformative. They invite us to live with more acceptance and less struggle, to free ourselves from the fear of the future, and to cultivate an internal peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. Meditation techniques to reduce anxiety. Buddhism offers a large number of practices that can help us deal with anxiety. Among these practices, meditation is one of the most powerful and accessible tools. When it comes to reducing stress and anxiety, meditation allows us to pause the mental whirlpool and restore a sense of tranquility and control. But how exactly can meditation be effective? First, mindfulness meditation is one of the most recommended practices. This technique consists of being completely present in the moment, observing thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without judging them. This means accepting everything that arises in our mind without trying to change it or react to it. The practice of mindfulness teaches us not to identify with thoughts, but to simply observe them as they are. This creates a healthy distance between us and our anxieties. For example, when you practice mindfulness, you can sit in a quiet place and focus on your breath. When you inhale and exhale, observe the physical and mental sensations associated with each breath. When your thoughts start to wander, and they will, simply observe them without getting caught up in them. Acknowledge the thought as just a thought, and return your attention to your breath. Over time, this practice helps diminish the intensity of anxious thoughts, because you learn to treat them with more lightness and less emotional involvement. One of the advantages of practicing mindfulness is that it can be done anytime, anywhere. You don't need a special room or ideal conditions. Even during a break at work or while walking to public transport, you can practice mindfulness by bringing your mind back to the present. By doing so, you begin to interrupt the constant cycle of anxious thoughts that arise when we're worried about the future or the past. Another highly effective technique is visualization. During visualization, you can imagine a relaxing scenario, like a calm beach, a serene forest, or any place that gives you a feeling of peace. The key here is to use all your senses. Imagine the colors, the sounds, the smells, and even the textures that surround you. By completely immersing yourself in a peaceful environment, your mind begins to move away from the sources of anxiety. This practice creates a mental refuge you can go to whenever you need a break from stress. For example, imagine you're experiencing a wave of anxiety. As you begin to visualize your tranquil beach, you can feel the gentle breeze on your face, hear the sound of the waves hitting the sand, and feel the cool sand under your feet. As you immerse yourself more in that scenario, your anxiety starts to diminish. This practice not only helps alleviate stress, but also cultivates a deep feeling of well-being. A technique that also stands out is loving kindness meditation, metta. This practice consists of generating feelings of love and kindness, first towards oneself and then towards others. By repeating phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be at peace," "May I be healthy," you begin to soften your mind and increase your compassion for yourself and for others. By generating feelings of love, your mind moves away from anxiety because the focus shifts to kindness and not worry. It may seem difficult, especially when we're trapped in a cycle of anxiety, but the practice of metta teaches us to cultivate a kinder and more compassionate view of ourselves. This technique is especially useful for dealing with emotions like anger or frustration, which often accompany anxiety. By nurturing feelings of kindness and acceptance, we weaken the power of negative emotions. Furthermore, we can integrate deep breathing techniques into our meditation practice. Deep breathing helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for decreasing heart rate and relaxing the body. When we feel anxiety, our breathing tends to become shallow and fast. By focusing on slow, deep breathing, we can quickly alleviate the physical symptoms of anxiety, also helping to calm our mind. Practicing these meditation techniques regularly not only helps reduce anxiety, but also contributes to the development of a more serene and focused mind. Over time, you'll become more capable of interrupting anxious thought patterns and cultivating a state of tranquility, even in stressful situations. These practices are not immediate solutions, but with persistence and patience, they become powerful tools on the path toward a more balanced life. If this message resonates with you, and you're seeking more moments of peace and insight, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for daily reflections rooted in ancient wisdom and modern clarity. Finding stillness in a noisy world. In the constant rush of modern life, it often feels as if we are caught in the middle of a relentless storm that never truly ends. We wake to the chime of alarms, already aware that the day is waiting for us with an endless list of demands. Before we've taken our first sip of coffee, we're bombarded by notifications, emails stacking up like impatient visitors at our mental doorway, social media feeds vying for attention, headlines carrying the weight of the world's troubles. We move from one task to the next, often without pause, driven not just by the ticking clock but by the invisible pressure of expectations, both from others and from ourselves. This isn't just an emotional experience, it is something our bodies carry in every cell. Stress hormones hum quietly in our bloodstream, like a low electrical current we've learned to live with. Our breathing becomes shallow and quick, as if we're bracing for something to happen. Muscles tighten, shoulders rising without us noticing, jaws clenching until they ache. We live in a low-grade state of fight or flight, as though danger is always a few steps away. Even moments of stillness can feel uneasy, as if the mind insists that we should be doing something, fixing something, worrying about something. We often tell ourselves that peace will come when things slow down, once this deadline is over, after this busy season. But the truth is, the world will not stop spinning for us. There will always be one more task, one more message, one more reason to hurry. The path to relief does not come from waiting for the storm to end. It comes from learning how to find a quiet place within it. The first and most radical step is recognition, to notice the storm without trying to silence it or run from it. Awareness is a kind of bravery. It means choosing to turn toward your experience even when it feels chaotic. Picture your mind as a busy street. Thoughts are cars, each one carrying its own urgency, speed, and noise. You don't step into the road to stop them. You don't run after the ones you like or try to block the ones you don't. You simply stand at the sidewalk and watch them pass. This is what it means to observe without interference. Let the anxious what-ifs drift by without boarding them. Let the sharp voice of self-criticism pass without inviting it in for tea. Notice the way your heart might pound, the way your breath shortens, the way your shoulders draw tight. Say to yourself, I see this is here, and nothing more. This act, simple in description but profound in practice, creates a subtle, sacred distance between you and your anxiety. But make no mistake, this is not a one-time cure. Internal stillness is like a muscle. It grows through consistent practice. The mind will wander again. The storm will roar again. But every time you guide yourself back to the present, you reinforce the anchor that keeps you steady. One of the simplest and most reliable ways to return to the present is through the senses. Touch. Feel the solid weight of your feet pressing into the earth with each step. Notice the sensation of your clothes against your skin or the smoothness of a pen between your fingers. Sight. Let your eyes rest on one object. Watch the way sunlight spills over its edges or how shadows dance in the corners. Sound. Listen to the hum of a refrigerator, the rustle of leaves, the distant sound of footsteps or voices. Allow yourself to really hear, without labeling or judging. Taste and smell. Pay attention to the warmth and complexity of flavors in your food. Breathe in the scent of your morning coffee, the faint smell of rain in the air, the subtle perfume of flowers on a table. These acts of sensory grounding are like gentle hands pulling you back from the pull of yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's worries. They place you firmly in the only place you truly have any power, the here and now. From this place, your problems may still be present, but you meet them differently. You become like a seasoned sailor navigating high seas, aware of the waves, prepared for their force, but no longer tossed helplessly in their chaos. Your calm does not depend on the weather outside. It comes from the steady, quiet place you've built within yourself. Calm is not the absence of noise or trouble. It is the ability to carry stillness with you, like an inner sanctuary you can step into at any time. The world will keep rushing, storms will keep forming, but you will know the way back to the quiet center of it all, again and again, as many times as it takes. Releasing the grip of control. A major source of our daily anxiety comes from a quiet but stubborn illusion. The belief that if we try hard enough, plan well enough, or think long enough, we can control every outcome. We apply this mindset to nearly everything: our career paths, the behavior of our loved ones, the timing of our goals, even the opinions strangers hold about us. We micromanage our calendars, agonize over the smallest decisions, and rehearse conversations in our heads as though the perfect script will guarantee the perfect response. But beneath this striving is a truth we often resist. Much of life is unpredictable, and much of it will never bend to our will. Illness can arrive without warning. Plans can unravel overnight. People can change their minds. The market, the weather, the timing of opportunities. So much lies outside the scope of our control. The more tightly we grip, the more tension we create, because we are wrestling with reality itself. Releasing the grip of control is not the same as giving up. It is not passivity, nor is it resignation. It is a deliberate shift in focus, away from the impossible task of orchestrating every result and toward the meaningful, tangible things we can shape. This is where our true influence lies. The practice begins with a simple but transformative skill: distinguishing between influence and control. You can influence your health by eating well, exercising and resting, but you cannot control whether you will ever face illness. You can influence your work by showing up with focus, creativity and diligence, but you cannot control your boss's mood or the company's financial decisions. You can influence your relationships by listening deeply, speaking honestly, and showing kindness, but you cannot control how others feel or behave in return. When you recognize the difference, you begin to redirect your energy toward what is actually within your reach: your actions, your effort, your character, your attitude. This is where your real power lives, not in forcing life to fit your expectations, but in meeting it with intention and flexibility. Letting go is not an abstract idea, it can be practiced. Imagine your worries as leaves floating on a stream. Each one drifts into view, perhaps carrying with it the weight of what if, or the sting of if only. You do not have to grab at each leaf, clutching it until your hands are raw. Instead, you can watch them pass, acknowledging them without letting them pull you into the current. This kind of detachment is not cold or uncaring, it is in fact the opposite. It makes you resilient, because you stop pouring energy into what you cannot alter. You create space for the unexpected to surprise you, for life to hand you something better than you had planned, for your mind to rest instead of grind. When you loosen your hold on outcomes, several things begin to shift. The pressure to be perfect loses its grip, because you see that perfect execution does not guarantee perfect results. The fear of failure softens, because you recognize that failure is often just a redirection. The joy of the present moment becomes sharper, because you are no longer holding it hostage to some future condition. Letting go is an act of trust. Trust in your own ability to adapt, trust in the unfolding of life, and trust that not knowing can be a fertile space for growth. The more you practice it, the more you realize that control was never the source of safety. Presence was.